Section about earthworms.
I made a plumber's outfit to go on a worm. I hand sewn felt together. I made a toolbox and a pipe wrench and sewn those to the outfit. An actual worm is inside the outfit. I made a fairy outfit for a worm. You can see the white wings and the green dress that looks cut up at the bottom like Tinkerbell's dress. I sewn the outfit together and sewn the wings onto the outfit. The worm's just in the outfit. The next outfit for a worm is meant to look like a dessert called an Arctic roll. I couldn't find brown felt, so I sewed flimsy brown fabric to more sturdy white felt so that the outfit would hold its shape. I made the white inside of the dessert out of white felt, and I sewed red felt to it for the dessert's red swirl. The end is sewn on so that it lifts up like a flap so the worm can get in and out. I made a priest outfit for a worm. I sewn a purple cloak together and sewn a black and white priest collar on. I then sewn a golden cross on and sewn a Bible on. I stitched a text-like pattern into the Bible. Worm priests can't see that well, so they just absorb the text through their skin. I made worms playing tennis. Tennis players wear white, so I made white outfits for the real worms to go in. The bottom half of each of the outfits are shorts. I stitched a tennis racket to the outfits. I sewed in the pattern of strings to the tennis rackets, and I sewed in a netting pattern to the tennis court's net. I also sewed the white lines onto the court. The rock person had a baby with a worm that wears an outfit. The baby's head is a rock that in real life had tubes made by worms naturally attached to the rock. I sewn a suit together that includes detail sewn into a bow tie and part of a white shirt underneath. I sewn trousers onto a blazer and I sewn a cane on. I made edible underwear for the worm. Worms can eat leaves, so I made the bra and knickers out of only leaves, so other worms can eat them. Hollister is a clothing brand. I sewed the word Hollister into the worm's top with only thread. It's the big dance tonight.
I'm wearing my red Hollister top. What are you wearing, worm?
You can't wear that. I'm wearing that. We'll clash. Oh, not you too, Rock. I stitched felt Hollister letters onto the Rock's felt top that I made. The black Hollister logo is meant to be a bird. We now all have matching outfits. A poo person had a baby with a worm that wears an outfit. The baby is a worm poo or worm cast. The worm poo is a cleaner, as you can see by the cleaner's head being a worm cast. The cleaner isn't cleaning worm poo, the cleaner is a worm poo. The cleaner has a mop stitched to them, and I stitched a hairy pipe cleaner to the mop for the mop's hairy bit. Worms can eat soil or sand, and therefore worm casts can contain either soil or sand. Worm casts can be worm-shaped. If worms ate ice cream, they may make worm-shaped casts made of ice cream. I pushed real ice cream through a syringe to make the shape. If worms ate mashed potatoes, they could produce worm-shaped casts made of mashed potatoes. I used real mashed potato and a syringe. The earthworm is not meant to look like it's wearing any clothes. The earthworm's pink body itself is meant to have just got much larger from eating all the ice cream and mashed potatoes. Basically, I've made a fat suit for the worm. I made a pinstriped suit for an ice cube. I sewn the black pinstripes into the suit. You can see a white shirt and a yellow tie underneath. There's also a brown and yellow hat. On the edge of the box there are cylinders of ice, which are meant to be the real ice cylinders, called ice cores, which are used to measure things like past climates. The ice person now genuinely lives in my freezer and takes ice cores from my freezer. I made a piercing saw. The worm is meant to be the blade on the saw. I made a round wooden handle out of brown and blue felt. The felt handle is hollow so the worm can go inside it like an outfit. This piercing saw worm can be used to cut things. It was too cold for worms, so for just this outfit, I had to edit a worm onto the worm-sized outfit I made. There are animals that have been bred to have a different skin texture. Sphinx cats have been bred to lack fur. Real scaleless snakes have been bred to lack scales. Real earthworms are covered in tiny bristles called setae. If earthworms were bred to lack the bristles, it may make earthworms look and feel different. The earthworms would appear smoother and shinier. The earthworms may feel smoother and softer as well. They may even feel more slippery. The bristles are important for earthworms, and so losing them may be detrimental to the earthworms. However, lots of animals that have been selectively bred can have problems due to their breed or mutation. I used the AI called Crayon to make the worm images. Earthworms' bristles help with movement. If the earthworms that were bred to lack bristles wore outfits, they may wear velvet. This is because velvet is hairy and would therefore compensate for the worm's lack of bristles. The worm is wearing a red velvet suit and velvet bow tie. I didn't have velvet, so I just printed an image of velvet onto it. Every outfit in this video is here except the Ice Cube's outfit, which is still in the freezer. People in the media may have to look a certain way that does not represent everyone, and this is unrealistic beauty standards. I think using worms, rocks and poo as models really subverts modern beauty standards. The outfits that I sewn are hand sewn. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. I sewn together a defibrillator for a real earthworm. Earthworms have 5 pairs of heart-like structures called aortic arches. I therefore made 10 pads on the defibrillator, one for each aortic arch. I sewn the pads to the red pouch I made, and the felt pads can be put back inside the red pouch. I stitched the letters AED on, which stands for Automated External Defibrillator. I stitched the electric symbol onto the felt heart, and I stitched the black patterning onto the pouch. Other earthworms are much bigger than the one I put in, and the bigger ones would be better sized for the defibrillator. Sausages wrapped in bacon are called pigs in blankets and are a Christmas food. I made a worm in a blanket. I sewed together a bacon outfit out of felt and put a real worm inside, so it's meant to be a worm wrapped in bacon. I drew a mole that is meant to be eating the worm in a blanket for Christmas dinner. The worm is on a plate. I gave the mole a knife and fork, a Christmas paper crown, and a white bib. Earthworm Jim is a video game character. The character is an earthworm that wears a robotic suit. I hand sewed together a suit for a real earthworm to actually go inside. I could only find a tiny earthworm to put in. I made a worm a fishing outfit, hat and rod. The rod is sewn to the outfit and black stripes are sewn into the outfit with thread. The worm is fishing with me, a human on the end of the fishing line. This was to reverse the human and worm roles, to emphasize how humans and animals are treated differently.
Part 2.
Worms can eat soil or sand, and therefore worm casts can contain either soil or sand. Worm casts can be worm-shaped. If worms ate ice cream, they may make worm-shaped casts made of ice cream. I pushed real ice cream through a syringe to make the shape. If worms ate mashed potatoes, they could produce worm-shaped casts made of mashed potatoes. I used real mashed potato and a syringe. The earthworm is not meant to look like it's wearing any clothes. The earthworm's pink body itself is meant to have just got much larger from eating all the ice cream and mashed potatoes. Basically, I've made a fat suit for the worm. The worm ate stuffing and pooped out a worm cast made of stuffing. The worm felt so distressing feelings, but when they ate food, they felt full instead. Feeling full was better than the other feelings. The worm thought they had to eat to feel all right, but they had gained so much weight. The worm pondered what to do. They decided if they ate inedible food, they would still feel full, but the food wouldn't have any calories. The worm ate hand cream and glitter with an array of different colours and pooped out a rainbow-coloured worm cast containing hand cream and glitter. On their new inedible food diet, the worm had lost weight, but disaster struck. The worm had eaten a brown and orange rusty nail, and the nail was stuck inside the worm. You could see the nail through the worm's skin. I also stitched on the pattern of segments with black thread. The worm was rushed to hospital and needed surgery immediately. After the operation, the doctor said to the worm, "You need therapy." The worm told the doctor they'd had therapy and it didn't work. The doctor then replied with, In my notes, it said you weren't compliant and didn't try with the therapy homework. The doctor went on, "We can only help you so much. You have to choose to get better, but you choose food instead." The worm moved back onto edible food and put the weight back on. The worm had a baby with sweet potato, but they didn't realize food couldn't bring them love. Because the worm squeezed out the sweet potato baby, the baby's head resembled a worm cast made of sweet potato. There was a big red ribbon atop the head. Despite their appearance, the baby was anything but sweet. After making the baby, the worm felt an empty feeling towards their food partner, and the worm thought, "Why doesn't the food love me?" The worm thought they'd try having a baby with more food. The worm gorged on loads of raw red meat. The worm then pooped out a cast of the meat. The cast was a huge mound and looked like it had squiggly lines in it like the other casts. The worm had basically made mince. The red meat, however, had made the worm very constipated, and the worm had to go to hospital. In hospital, the worm's diet was limited. The worm needed food to stave off their feelings of distress. Then the worm's sweet potato baby came in. The worm felt tempted to eat their sweet potato baby. The worm thought, "No, I can't do that." But the worm was so tempted. The baby began asking the worm why they were so fat, and the baby was keep telling the worm they were fat. The worm said, "Please don't push me." The worm didn't want to eat their baby. The baby wouldn't cease their talking. The worm had had enough. They needed food, and they ate their baby. Afterwards, the worm felt so guilty. They questioned why they did it. They would do anything to bring their baby back. The doctor said, "There's a chance you might be able to poop your baby out alive, but if you eat more food, then the food will get all mixed in with the baby, and the baby will become diluted and lost. If you want your baby to live, you have to not eat until you poop out your baby." The worm had thought they needed food. This was too much. The worm had to save their baby. They couldn't lose them again. The worm realized they shouldn't put food first. The worm was still constipated though and had to endure without food for a few days, but finally they let out an explosive bowel movement and pooped out their baby. The baby was alive. The worm exclaimed to the doctor, "I'm going to try therapy again." After the worm had saved their baby and showed they cared, the baby was just a little bit nicer to their worm parent. Following therapy, the worm didn't want to eat anything bad at all, as they didn't want their mental health disorder to take over again. Eventually, though, they would realize everything in moderation was right. They ate butter, pooped it out, and spread it on their child's toast. They sat down together and talked. The worm had now concentrated on their child, and their relationship had grown. Part 3.
Here's a big bag of worm poo, also known as worm casts. To the staff at Rococo. Sometimes you can feel like a worthless piece of poo, and that phrase can be constantly playing in your head. You may be very critical of yourself, or you may feel a lot of shame or guilt. You may feel very depressed, anxious, worried, scared, confused, or overwhelmed, or empty. You may feel insecure, inadequate, insignificant, or worthless, and you may feel disgust at yourself, or you may hate yourself and have low self-esteem. However, if you ever feel like a worthless piece of poo, just remember that worm poo is amazing, like you all are. Worm poo is like squiggly lines. It's a work of art. The squiggly lines look like an abstract Jackson Pollock painting, or Jomon pottery, or the complex and impressive artistic patterns puffer fish make in sand. It's just sand and soil. There's nothing disgusting about sand or soil. It's very safe and comfortable to be around compared to other poo. It's a combination of geology like sand and soil minerals, as well as biology like organic material that is so beneficial to the ecosystem, just like you all are so beneficial to everyone at Rococo. It's all Earth's geological and biological cycles, like rocks being ground into sand. It's all Earth's spheres interacting like the biosphere and geosphere. Billions of years of geological history has led up to the worm's poo. All the material in the worm poo can be traced back in time. Weathering, erosion, deposition, transportation through rivers and deltas. All the geological events in Earth's history, all Earth's food chain and ecology and ecosystem interact to produce it. Billions of years of evolution has led up to this. Worm poo is amazing. Like all of you, next time you feel like a worthless piece of poo, just remember how amazing worm poo is, like you all are, and how beneficial worm poo is. Just like how beneficial you are to everyone at Rococo. Just like how I like geology, biology, and worms. Everyone likes you, just like worm poo. And thank you to all the other members of staff not mentioned in this video. And thanks from my pet rock as well, who one day may also get ground up into worm poo. When there are rocks on top of the ground, worms and the soil underneath have to go around the rock to poo out soil on the surface. The worms therefore poo out soil around the rock, therefore burying the rock. Everything is interconnected and we all influence each other's lives. And thanks from my dust mite girlfriend made of dust and dust mites. Soil is made of all my autistic special interests, like rocks, worms and mites, and worm poo is made of soil. Being compared to worm poo is a great compliment. In the drawing, Mandy's not frowning outwardly because they're struggling internally. You may not think much of soil, but if earthworms ate ice cream instead of soil, their worm casts would be made of sweet ice cream. I pushed ice cream through a syringe to get the shape. With autism, you can attribute human-like qualities or feelings to animals and inanimate objects, and feel empathy for animals or inanimate objects. In my stories, everything is conscious, even shadows themselves have their own separate consciousness. The shadow of me hugging a worm is conscious. Giant worms exist in real life. So I like attributing human qualities to everything, and this even includes worm casts. That's why the staff members are worm poo casts. I use dust from my vacuum cleaner to make the dust person, and I avoid harming dust in case it hurts dust mites, and I feel empathy for dust mites. I therefore did not really compress or squish the dust when taking it out of the vacuum cleaner. And OCD causes me anxiety around harming mites. Mites are like my babies, I love them. And they're like little red dots. I do not want to cause dust mites any pain or suffering. My OCD was so bad that for a long time I even stopped creeping up on my family and tickling them with a feather duster in case I hurt dust mites on the feather duster, because I did not want to cause the dust mite any pain or suffering. The dust person will have to dust themselves. And no, I am not actually attracted to mites. However, because with autism, you can see mites as more human-like. When you also have OCD on top of that, you can irrationally worry you're attracted to mites when you're obviously not. And remember to keep up self-care and doing nice things for yourself, because you matter as well. Here's Dean made out of worm casts, and their shaving foam is also made out of worm casts as well. Shaving foam comes out in the same shape as worm casts.